Hello and welcome to Shop Talk Live. Today is part one of the Big Green Reset, focusing on sustainability in the convenience store. Dan Montford is joined by Mark Dempsey, Consulting Director at Global Data, Debbie Robinson, Chief Executive at Central England Cooperative, Andrew Thornton, founder of Thornton's Budgeons, and Nate Marsh, Chief Revenue Officer at Greenprint. Over to you, Dan.
Well, it's fair to say that the global pandemic has had a big impact on retail priorities and seen some considerable shifts in consumer behaviour, but sustainability issues still remain. Carbon footprint, food waste, plastic waste, and really our whole concept of health. So over the next two programmes, Shop Talk Live is going to be looking at what we call the Big Green Reset. Firstly, starting off looking at what a good sustainability strategy looks like in a convenience store and how retailer and supplier brands can best respond. In the second part of the programme, we've got a great panel. I'm going to be joined by Andrew, Debbie and Nate, as you saw, and we're going to be talking about, really talking about strategy on this topic. First though, we're going to set the scene with an evaluation of where the consumer is globally on this. And I'm delighted to be joined by an old friend, Mark Dempsey, who's Consulting Director at Global Data. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Dan.
Nice to see you. We were just chatting a few minutes ago. We've known each other professionally for 20 years. You were at Summerfield when we first met, working on forecourts, weren't you, Mark?
Exactly. Excited to join the forecourt revolution at quite an early stage, 2000 Summerfield forecourts, and then the Summerfield Essentials brand. And great to have been working with you and a friend of yours for 20 years. So very happy to support today.
Always interesting to chat with you. Now, you spent a lot of time in retail. You went on to work for Spar, and you were in Canada working for PepsiCo as well. So you've had a lot of global experience, and now obviously with Global Data. Tell us a bit, before we get into your slides, tell us a bit about Global Data and how you put your research together, Mark, because we'd all be interested.
Sure. Well, most of the slides I'm going to show rely quite heavily on our consumer surveys. So we invest very heavily in many hundreds of thousands of consumer surveys per year. We've actually just, I think now 20 weeks into a COVID-specific series of consumer surveys, and I'll touch on some of those. So we really believe in getting to the crux of what today's consumer thinks, their hopes, aspirations, the trends really, as not only the industry shows us through all of the data, values and volumes and metrics that we have, but also really through the eye of the consumer. So that's what I'd like to focus on today.
Great. Well, I think it's a great way to tee up the discussion, just to really see at what's changed and where the consumer is on sustainability. So why don't you take us through your slides, Mark, and we can perhaps have a quick chat as well.
I will, thank you. So really, with reference to the COVID consumer surveys first, we've noticed a very interesting shift, if you like, in terms of new views on sustainability. So what we've been asking consumers the whole way through the last 20 weeks or so is how important different aspects are to them. And we're starting to see terms like supporting local, which of course have been increasing in importance recently, really rising to the fore. So there seems to be this shifting perception of, while recycling, reducing, keeping, let's say, my environmental footprint front of mind, these are still important topics. Plastic-free, reusable packaging. These are still strong and important ideas. But this idea through the pandemic of how can I do good as a consumer really has been pushing people down the route of thinking about locally sourced, local businesses, supporting my community, in a way that we hadn't seen quite so significantly in the past. And Nick, if we could just move on to the next slide there as well, please. One of the things that Global Data is very passionate about tracking is actually the themes, the trends, the main driving motivations. And there are 6 key, let's say, driving motivations that we study. Fair to say, I think, that over the last few years, things like sustainability and ethics, smart and connected, and then many of the issues around evolving landscapes such as urbanization and developing family, lifestyles have become more and more important. But in the last 18 weeks, as you can see us tracking here, they've really taken a secondary role to some of the more traditional themes and trends. So we see in these post-COVID times, comfort, uncertainty, health and wellness, and ease and affordability really rising to the fore. Now, this is what's driving today's consumer decision making. So for a while, in the short term, we might expect to see decisions about safe, decisions about health, wellness, good for my immune system, risk-free, value-oriented, really rising to the fore and taking over the way that consumer thinks temporarily, which may, of course, put sustainability and ethics and digital and evolving landscape themes on the back burner for a few months in the shorter period of time, let's say.
Well, very significant. How important do you think these are, Mark, in terms of shaping retailer strategy? How important should they be?
Well, I think in the short term, retailer strategy has to show a shift towards understanding today's nervous consumer. Wherever we see consumers trending towards comfort, trending towards ease and affordability, I think it speaks clearly to the fact that consumers are worried about disposable income. Consumers are worried about job security. And where we see that real rise in health and wellness, of course, that had been a trend over the last few years, but as more and more consumers tell us that immune boosting items are key, retailers and manufacturers have to start adapting their message, have to start really pushing this idea that we understand what the consumer is going through and adapting maybe assortment, but certainly adapting the messaging towards that. Supportive promotions to really help that idea of value, and also more and more of the trusted heritage brands and health brands pushed to the fore really may help consumers feel safe in these times, and allowing ideas of sustainability, ethics to maybe play a supporting role. But let's not forget they'll re-become important in the future as we move on from COVID.
So they're still there, but this morphing, if you like, of where the consumer is on these topics, is that, and that's very much a global phenomenon. I'm just thinking we've got 14 countries watching, and it just interesting to get your reaction on how global this shift is.
Yeah, it's global, Dan. This is the global view, but actually, if we get into assessing each of the individual countries we track, very similar across the world. So shouldn't forget, sustainability and ethics is holding its own. It's important. It's a driving force, and it will continue to be so in the future. But for now, my biggest guideline to our retailers, manufacturers is finding the right balance between sustainable and ethical themes, and as I say, comfort, health, and affordability.
Yeah, well, that's very, 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 very interesting. Just picking up one thing you mentioned and emphasised, Mark, local. How important? Obviously, local is something where, you know, supporting your community. Doing, I think you said, how can I do good as a consumer? I mean, I thought that was interesting, and you know, perhaps you could just expand on that quickly.
Yeah, I think as travel has become restricted, even around the UK in many instances, and it looks like that second lockdown or severely restricted movement might be coming back into place. Really, consumers are having to think about their own way of acting in a slightly smaller universe. So, for example, farm shops started to really see boosted sales. People deciding, well, I should use my own local farm shop or local baker, local ingredient producers, as a way of giving something back into the community. If my ability to do good in terms of large scale charity events or do good at my child's school, etc., is reduced because of our restrictive movement, I still want to find the right way to act. And we were certainly seeing a lot of qualitative and quantitative inputs suggesting that that's something that consumers in the UK particularly, but all around the world, have really tried to adapt.
That's very interesting. I suppose in a way, I mean, for many consumers, their world has shrunk, and their community previously may have been more of a global community, or certainly a geographically broader than local community, and it's now really all their attention is on their local community, and their relationships in that community are suddenly more important.
I think that idea of relationship and community has become key. And interestingly, just to jump onto the next slide, I've called out something which I think is best in class from the food service industry. But I see this really morphing more and more into retailing, to convenience, into forecourts. This idea of community, oh, sorry, Nick, if you would just jump back one slide. Thank you. This idea of Shake Shack, and they stand for something good. So carefully sourced premium ingredients from like-minded purveyors that we admire and love. So this idea here is that Shake Shack is saying, you want to work with us in the future, to manufacturers or partners, you have to share the same ethics as us. You have to be as committed to creating a sustainable lifestyle as we are. And you can see why 3/4 of all global consumers are telling global data that living a sustainable lifestyle is important to their well-being. So more and more retailers, convenience operators, food service operators are going to need to adapt to that. And the reason for really wanting to pause on this slide, today's consumer was increasingly sustainability focused. And while we will see a slight pause in that, while other themes and trends become more important as we navigate COVID, I strongly believe that this will only rise again in the future. More and more consumers will focus on their sustainable lifestyles. They'll focus on their well-being. They'll focus on ethics. And that will be led, of course, by Gen Z, the most sustainable focused demographic that we will have interacted with in our lifestyles.
One question, Mark, and this is a tough one. Apologies, because you weren't expecting this, but just thinking about what you've said, and you know what Shake Shack's positioning, you know, standing for something good. Do you think, in a way, I mean, from us, and we're at the board table, retailers are thinking about how they position themselves, what their future strategy is. You know, I guess they have to think about as you say, the short-term shift, but they also have to think about how they're perceived as a business, don't they? And what they stand for, and make sure they stand for something, and make sure that they stand for something good, so that when we come out of this, you know, they are ready for that kind of evaluation, you know, which could be quite harsh, perhaps, you know, when we get there.
Yeah, I'm positive that the winning operators, traders, retailers, forecourt players, even the winning manufacturers over the course of the next year will be those that have made clear what their ethics are, how they've supported their local communities, how they've supported their staff, how they've supported their customers. That might not necessarily only be the traditional big, large brands that we could all name. That could be some of the secondary brands, some of the growing independents, the ones that have really adapted and made clear what they stand for. I think will be the ones that navigate this incredibly difficult time, locally and globally, the best, and they'll be the ones that have the largest revenues coming out of this to show for it. Interestingly, with the next slide that we're on, I mentioned Gen Zs on the previous slide. This is a staggeringly high number from all of the demographics that we track, all of the trends that we track. It's rare to see something in the high 80s in terms of what a demographic is looking for. 87% of global Gen Zs want companies to make clear the sustainability values they stand for. And it's why one of my favorite examples from around the world, from my travels with retailers and operators, YPF in Argentina, for those of you that don't know, the brand is let's say the national fuel retailer in Argentina, incredibly focused on driving their food service and their grocery and their fuels offering. But the thing that they are most focused on is their environmental friendliness, their sustainability, their corporate social responsibility. So in all of their stores around Argentina, you see these great murals all about how they recycle, reutilize, reduce, calling out the benefits of all of their fresh products, their healthy products, why they are an entirely sustainable operator, and how they are trying to move forwards with that. They'll even acknowledge openly that they're not perfect yet, but they're trying to get there. And I think that's an incredibly strong message. And it's the right message for Gen Z. Gen Z will be our customers of the future, but they'll also be our bosses of the future and our colleagues of the future. And they are the most, let's say, liberal generation that we will have worked with, the most understanding and seeking of sustainability and demanding of high ethics that we will have ever worked with. And I think it's critical that we start moving now to really win the Gen Z consumer across convenience and forecourt operations. And I think YPF is a great example that we can all learn from.
Well, absolutely. Great to see YPF, you know, with highlighted for the work they're doing. So we've got some great friends at YPF, and you know, great that you're pulling them out for the work they're doing. I suppose the other question, Mark, and again jumping off the script a bit, is that retailers obviously have to think about their customers all the time and the future in terms of getting the strategy right for them, but they also have to think about motivating their team, don't they? And making clear the sustainability values that they stand for the benefit of how their business feels about and their colleagues feel working for that business. I guess, you know, this is a bit off your, you know, off your script, but I guess that's very important to CEOs as well, isn't it?
Well, we call the trend sustainability and ethics for a reason. I think you can bring those two themes very, very neatly together, and I would suggest that the operators, the retailers, manufacturers that are most focused on sustainability issues are also those that are most focused on ethics, be that the ethics of the business or the ethics of simply how you treat people today, how you interact today. And that maybe comes back to the idea of community. We can all think about best in class leaders or mentors or coaches or brands that we've worked for. And I think the leading companies today, and it's a great way for a convenience operator to differentiate themselves, will be those that inspire their staff, inspire their managers, coach them, look after them, and allow them to maybe take on leadership roles within the stores or within the regions. Again, that's not a UK or a region specific thing. That's a global opportunity, a global truism, if you like. Let's leverage this passion that we see from particularly the younger generations and really help them become the leaders of tomorrow. And I see convenience and forecourt players really having a great opportunity to lead the way there.
Well, you got me convinced. I think that makes a huge amount of sense, Mark.
Great. Well, good. So final slide. Sustainability and ethical issues, well, they can combine to make a strong impact in retail. It's not teaching anyone on this call anything, Dan, to point out that IKEA is a leader in terms of sustainability and ethics, but maybe just one observation to wrap up. I love the way that IKEA is just continuing to develop its food service offering within its stores. And I think a learning here within the convenience and forecourt world, where food service is going to continue to play a much, much more important role. It's a way to steal share. It's a way for anyone on the line today to differentiate from their competition. Just look at how IKEA is continuing to change the game. So not settling just for its leadership position in terms of meatballs and hot dogs, but we all know they've been moving towards vegan hot dogs, vegan meatballs. Now plant-based vegan katsu curry has just launched, and that's going to roll out likely around the world. New vegan meatballs have been tested successfully in many countries and are rolling out around the world. It's just that commitment that I love to, this is what we own, this is where we win, this is what our customer expects of us, and we will just continue to develop these ideas. And again, it's an example of where sustainability and ethics, it is not linear. It can include many, many items. And I think for me, it includes this idea of plant-based food service expansion. And maybe as a final closing thought, I'd love to challenge everyone on the line today to think about the role that plant-based, vegan, expanded cuisines, expanded food service offerings can play to differentiate your opportunity in food service convenience and forecourt retailing.
Great point. And it's funny, isn't it, Mark? Because I think last time we were on a trip together, we organised a store tour in New York, didn't we? And yep. Plant-based was just beginning to take off there. That was a few years ago, and it's interesting to see how it's just grown and grown, hasn't it? So great point.
It's exponential, and it helps differentiate. Yeah.
Very good. Well, look, Mark, it's been a great pleasure having the benefit of your data and your opinions and expertise. So thanks very much for joining us. Please stay on the call.
Sure.
If you could mute and we'll say goodbye at this point. But really appreciate you spending time with us, and we'll get to our panel and put some of your findings to the panel as our first question. So, Mark, thanks for joining us, and let me welcome. Well, I think the best way to sum up the three businesses here is three businesses with purpose. And I think businesses with purpose is one of the key points that Mark made there. So I'd like to welcome Debbie Robinson, Andrew Thornton, and Nate Marsh. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Dan.
So let's get reactions really to those slides. And Debbie, maybe you could lead off.
Well, firstly, great slides, and I identify with everything that was covered on there for sure. Certainly things that we're looking at Central England Co-op play very much to that tune, and we're just about to launch a concept called the Refillery, which is obviously you kind of can have access to your own products, but we're working with Suma, which is a producer co-op. So it's a really neat way of working with local producers at a hyper-local level, but also allowing the consumer to make real choices themselves about how they actually access their goods and services. And I think one big area for us that really does strike that tune sort of around the need for comfort and things is around creating a safe environment. So we have been incredibly careful and adhering to COVID guidelines, but actually doing that in a really simple and humane way, and really appealing to the public to actually show respect to each other and very importantly respect to colleagues in the store environment. And I have to say, you know, generally speaking, people have been just tremendous. It has felt like a real effort for everybody to understand where each other's coming from, and to make sure there's enough to go around. So you know, I certainly all of the slides resonated with me. We have a range that's called GROW, GRO, which is a purely plant-based range, predominantly around mealtime and also some evening meal solutions. So even though that particular area of the market took a bit of a hit during the current circumstances, we still see there's a lot of potential there, and ranges like GROW are probably for the flexitarians amongst us that actually want a day or two a week where they can just sort of abstain from meat, rather than sort of dedicated vegans and vegetarians. So yeah, really great slides, and you know, music certainly to our ears as a cooperative society.
Thanks, Debbie. Andrew, any surprises? Any sort of question marks answered?
No, I mean, I think, you know, with Debbie, I totally agree. I think it all makes a huge amount of sense. There's no doubt that the sustainability piece has taken, you know, a little bit of a down, but I think that's very short term. It doesn't surprise me at all about this whole sort of safety, nervousness. Definitely, like Debbie, we've been really focused on, we've been focused a lot on plastic free, and we've had to reverse some of the things we did. So our beautiful olive bar, which you can sneeze all over, you know, we had to, you know, go to pre-packed, and we will eventually return to that. So for me, it's been a balance between, I think we've been very clear laying our stall out, so we haven't gone back from any of that, but we've been having to focus on the day-to-day. I think this whole thing about plant-based is actually critical. And for me, sustainability is about the health of the planet, people about the health of people, health is about our own health. They're all linked. I don't think you can separate them. And I was given a book earlier this year called How Not to Die. And basically it said, every major disease the Western world has, solution, plant-based diet. So I've become an 80% plant-based diet person, which is different than flexitarian, Debbie. It's a new thing. which means I can have a piece of steak or some cheese when I fancy it, but 80% of what I eat is plant-based. And we have really, over the last while, been doing more and more of that in the last 3 or 4 years. So our sushi bar, our sandwiches, salads, every bit of our store has vegan options available. At the same time, we've just put in a really top-end butcher in the last month. But that's saying, for those like me who will eat a little bit of meat, I only want to eat the absolute best meat there is. I don't know more of these battery chickens, you know, 2-pound chickens from Asda. I mean, that's just, and more people will go that direction, I think.
Yeah.
Andrew, just for us on that sort of stepping back on sustainability, what we've really tried to do, and what I think is really important, is this era of acceleration where technology's had a really important role, and home delivery services have really come to the fore, even in the smallest of community stores. But we actually took a decision, well, to do 2 things. Firstly, we didn't have the technology ourselves, so we partnered with Snappy Shopper, and we've got a trial going. But what we did is just took the decision that we would only use electric vehicles for that. So certainly during the current circumstances, I cannot believe how many vehicles go down our road. I thought we lived on a quiet street.
Yeah.
You know, it's why we chose to live here. Suddenly we're invaded, but at least if a Central England co-op delivery vehicle comes round, you won't hear it.
Yeah.
So, and I think in the presentation earlier, we talked about inspiring people. It's just been brilliant that our team is saying, well, if we're doing it, we're entering into this home delivery market. We've got to be really progressive in our thinking and do it better than how anyone else is actually doing it at the moment. So I actually feel in this era of acceleration that sustainability, if you just think, which you, Andrew, do totally and instinctively, in a sustainable way, it will deliver such a better solution. And I also, I'm a big fan of the use of the word sustainability, because for us it also means, you know, financially sustainable, humanly sustainable, as well as environmentally sustainable, because it's no good having wacky ideas that are going to save the planet if you can't actually make them economical and make them attractive to the consumer. So for us, sustainability has, you know, many meanings.
Great.
And I think just to go back on that, sorry, if you have, you know, so Debbie, in your situation, you would not have done anything other than thought about electric vehicles because of where you come from and your people come from. And that's really, but when you're set up in that place, then you don't, it's not a big decision you have to make. It's just, well, of course we are. It's like we went into plastic free. Well, of course we're going to do it because that's just who we are.
Absolutely.
I think, I think what we've got here, Nate, and I want to bring you in, is 2 businesses that really see sustainability as something they just do throughout their businesses. I think, Debbie, you make that point. Andrew, you know, you've kind of lived that over the last few years in your business. Nate, how important is it for retailers, do you think, to see sustainability as a separate, you know, as integral to their whole business, their whole business, as opposed to a bucket, if you like, that they sometimes look at?
I mean, I think what's most important for businesses, and I think Debbie and Andrew have highlighted this, and Mark with his data. I mean, sustainability doesn't necessarily have to be its own distinct strategy, but you have to have a strategy for sustainability. So it's so critical that when you're implementing any sort of point of your business, that sustainability is kind of thought about, because it does have this impact across your entirety of your business. And so, you know, when we think about, you know, implementing food service, when we think about how we source our energy, when we think about, you know, our forecourts, we have to be informed by sustainability. Otherwise, you end up with a really disconnected sustainability strategy that's not practical for your business. Sustainability is really about time and place and location. And so, you know, Mark talked a lot about kind of, you know, plant-based diets and introducing things like that. And I think it's incredibly important to think about it that way. I think also it might not be practical in certain locations. It might not be practical inside of a specific time and place of your business. I think what's most important inside of your sustainability strategy, though, is that you're able to communicate what that strategy is to your customers. They want to know that you have a roadmap for where you're going to go on your sustainability journey. They want to know that, you know, where you're currently at on that journey. They want to be a part of that journey. And so, you know, to the extent that you can communicate and engage with your customers, allow them to participate on your journey, those are all critically important things. And that becomes really difficult if you just kind of isolate your sustainability strategy inside of a single group and don't leverage their expertise or don't leverage that strategy when you're trying to innovate within the space. And I think particularly in times like COVID, you know, Debbie, I think, hit on it perfectly, which is sustainability is so much more than just environmental issues, right? We have to do this in the context of what is right for your business. And during COVID, you know, we're very focused on employee safety. We're very focused on customer safety. And so how do we still keep progress? How do we continue to move forward inside of that sustainability journey while still kind of focusing on what's most critically important in this time and place?
No, very, very good.
Yeah.
And is it tough to communicate that strategy to your customers, Deb? You know, as on Nate's point there.
I think, so anybody that's worked with me knows I don't like POS, because we end up using cardboard and print and glue and stuff to tell people how much of the environment we're saving. So to me, they're quite contradictory. So I think the message has to be congruent. And if you can create an environment that looks sustainable, I think people get it. So if you use natural materials, there's a good cue. If on our bins, for example, we just simply have 0 to landfill since 2012, we don't say anything else. It's a bin and it's got a message on what we do with our waste. And we happen to work with Fair Share, which a lot of retailers in the UK do, but we've gone a stage further with them in that all of the waste food at the end of the day is redistributed, but not on a mass level. It's actually, we have a picking centre where it's segregated, and certain foods will go to a local preschool group, others will go to people that are living on the street that have very different dietary needs and preferences as well. So it's not just here's what we've got left over, it's actually finding the best home for that. And I think, so using third parties such as Fair Share in this particular case is shorthand for communicating some of the things that you're doing. So I totally agree that you should communicate it effectively, but not in a way that's gratuitous and that there's more waste created as a consequence. So I always find that quite a balance, actually.
Yeah,
so
Debbie,
in-store radio, till screens, social, digital, brilliant. Print, not for me.
Yeah, and Debbie, I think what I hear when you say that, I think, and agree with, is when you are communicating your sustainability strategy or kind of your goals to your customer, it has to feel like it is a part of your brand in the direction you're already moving. If we make a huge left-hand turn as businesses and just suddenly react to consumer demand and try to implement a single solution to sustainability, and then, to your point, grossly communicate that, it comes across sometimes as disingenuous. And so I think that's why it's so important in our digital communication, in our ESG reporting, in our kind of everyday brand messaging to our customers. We're constantly touching on what we're doing in the local community. What are we doing that is, you know, a true sustainability strategy? And to your point, it can't be, you know, talking out of kind of both sides of your mouth and saying, hey, we're truly focused on sustainability. Meanwhile, here's a bunch of cardboard cutouts and POS materials that are not sustainable. And so I think, again, it goes back to the fact that it has to be a cohesive strategy. It can't just be a single point of contact or communication.
Andrew, you've got a comment on this from a point of view of where your strategy is right now. And perhaps you give a bit of background on plastic waste and what you've been doing, because obviously many people are familiar, but not everybody in our audience will be familiar with that. So it'd be really good just to have a quick recap of your journey.
Sure. I mean, our purpose is, so we are a single store operator in London, a Budgeons franchise. which is a very loose franchise. And our purpose is, we are the community supermarket that really cares about people and planet. And we've had that for about 8 years now. So everything we do sits underneath that. And for me, the most critical part of the whole equation is the people. And people have touched on that. And we've evolved a concept called authentic leadership, which is a way for people to be truly themselves. And I know it sounds really obvious, but for people not to leave half themselves at home, because I can't say that at work and they would never, and people wouldn't like that and so on and so forth. We've evolved a way of people bringing them fully to themselves with the store. And we call it authentic leadership. And it's more than just empowering, and it's more just about delegating. It's really giving people true responsibility. And it's letting people focus on what they're really good at doing. So if you really hate admin, then there's no point in every appraisal being told, oh, Dan, you got to improve your admin, because you hate admin and you're useless at it. So let's get Debbie to do your admin because she loves it. I'm sure you do, Debbie, of course. But there are people who do. I mean, I know sitting around this table, maybe not, but there are people who love doing admin and are really good at it. And for me, one of the greatest testimony of that working, just before lockdown, I was diagnosed with a thing called adrenal fatigue. It's like a burnout. And I was told I had to take some serious amount of time off, which I did. And I'm based partly in Germany. I locked down in Germany, and the team in the store, they ran the store through the most challenging, difficult time in our business, and they did an amazing job. So much so that I'm almost redundant. When I go back now, it's like, well, kind of, yeah, hello, yeah, okay, that looks very nice. But, it's all in hand. So that, to me, is what authentic leadership is about. And so with that, people do know, and I get this point about, you said, Debbie, about congruency or something, some big, long word like that. But ultimately, people have to feel. Steve Jobs used to talk about imputing. People have to, and I had to look that word up as well. People have to feel it. So people feel, they know what we're about and they feel it. And you don't, and people get that. So with plastic, when David Attenborough did Blue Planet 2 and really brought into people's living room that this was a huge crisis, it was almost like, well, we've got to do something about it. There wasn't even a will we, is this important to us? Of course we got to do something. So very quickly, in 2000, about just over 2 years ago, we said, right, we worked with the Plastic Planet, which is an amazing organization who understand more about plastic-free alternatives than anybody else in the world. And we said on the 1st of September, in 10 weeks' time, we are going to launch 1,500 plastic-free lines in our supermarket to show the rest of the world, the big retailers mostly, it's not that difficult. And 10 weeks later, we launched 1,800. In the run-up to COVID, we were up to 2,600. I know it's slipped since then. And we got an immediate 4% uplift in sales, but for exactly the reasons Mark shared, which is people that, right, these guys get it. They're doing something about it. Here's someone who I can actually go to this store and I can shop plastic free. And people think, yeah, I want to reward people who do the right thing. Now, you got, Debbie, 4% total store sales uplift. I mean, you can spend millions on refurbishing stores and not get that sort of uplift. But that shows that people do care. And, we also achieved our objective in that every single major retailer, not in the UK, but only in the UK, but around the world, came to see what we're doing. And they all, and Tesco probably have done more than anybody on plastic free in the sort of in the 12 months up to COVID. And they were very heavily influenced by what we did. They came to see us. I met Dave Lewis numerous occasions because they really took it seriously. So yeah, I feel really proud. And my chief, just one last point. On the day we launched, and we had Jim Broadbent, the actor, as a customer, Horace Slughorn from Harry Potter, opening it. And at the end of the day, 3 people, all of whom were well into their 40s, came to me and said, this is the proudest day of my working life. And that, to me, sort of summed it all up.
Mm-hmm. Is it, I mean, Debbie, is it the bigger the company, is this, I mean, how challenging is this, if you like, strategic shift, in terms of changing the, the whole nature of your business? I mean, how challenging is this as the business grow, as the scale of the business increases, the size of Tesco?
Well, I think, of course, it's a challenge because that comes down to your colleagues and their advocacy. So it's who you recruit in the first instance and if they actually subscribe to your values. And one of the first questions I ask anybody who wants to join Central England Co-op is why? You know, why do you want to join the co-op? And if the answer is, well, you know, I want to make a difference, I want to make a contribution, I want to save the world, I'm an environmentalist, I believe in equal opportunities, that's what I'm looking for. And if that doesn't come through, you know, they can always get a job somewhere else. And, you know, sometimes there are tough calls with members of the team, and you kind of say, you know, I mean, I've said, of course we did electric vehicles, but, you know, what you don't know is the first proposal that came through was diesel. And I was, oh, really? Just talk me through this. And of course, they knew very quickly into the conversation and reversed out. But the thinking was, it's a trial, and we would have to put the electric charging points into the store, which required quite significant capital investment. And if it wasn't going to work, we'd have wasted that money. So, and I said, really, really good thinking. But the first thing that you have to think about is, what is the cooperative difference? You know, what is the member benefit here? And we are duty bound to find those things. So I think it's a constant, but everybody feels great. And I have heard them telling people, oh, you won't hear our vehicles coming around the corner, they're all electric. And it's amazing. And I think it's ignorance in the truest sense of the word. And most people that think, I can go to work, I can do my job, or I can do my job and I can make a difference, because the time we have is precious. And actually most people want to make a difference at every level in an organisation. So helping them find the difference that they can make every single day is really, really rewarding.
Yeah, can I make just one point on that? Sorry, we did we continuously look at our measuring people and human potential and so on, and there's a tool we use called the human potential measurement, and there's a whole lot of measures, but when we do it, our highest measure is always commitment to a higher cause, and that's across the whole organization, including people who work for 6 hours on a Sunday as a student. On average, everybody gets, that's the dimension that we score the highest on, that people know this is a job that's more than just a job of scanning these baked bins in the back door, out the front door, as cheaply as possible.
And Dan, I would just add kind of two things, echoing kind of what Debbie and Andrew have said. I think one of the most impressive things about truly focusing on sustainability and implementing that within your organization is the employee engagement side of things. I mean, I think one of the things I've been most impressed with over the last 6 years with Greenprint is as we've helped partners implement long-term sustainability strategies, the impact that's had on their ability to engage their employees, retain employees, and start to attract folks that are sharing similar beliefs. The other thing I just wanted to highlight, you know, when we're implementing sustainability, I think it's important that we understand that some of the changes we're making don't always have to be massive shifts. Small incremental changes over time can have the same impact. But what's most important is that we do these things in ways, and Andrew's a great example, and Debbie as well with the co-ops, of making it easy for our customers to take advantage of these things. They don't want to jump through hoops in order to make sustainable choices. They want it to be easy for them. And Debbie, I think before the call, you were talking about some of the things you're doing with bike repair stations at your stores, which I think is incredibly impressive. And Andrew, of course, everything you're doing around plastic, we make it easy for these customers to make the choice. I think that's one of the most important things.
Because to build on that, customers, they know this is an issue. They know the environment is a real big issue. And it's mind-bogglingly overwhelming what to do about it. So if you have businesses who say, here's something you can contribute, great. I mean, the card you have that helps max salt customers just offset their fuel. Simple, great, fantastic, love it. I told my dad about it the other day because he's in Dublin. I said, great. So there's people can say, oh yeah, I can do something. So that's what people want, is little things they can do in their everyday life to help them feel better that they're making a contribution. And that's the bike station thing is wonderful. You know, and Debbie and I were joking about going to visit this retailer in Argentina. We'd cycle. But that's, you know, we need to all more cycle. You know, it's just like, And if we make it
The
easy,
electric bike. I know,
because,
Debbie, you've done all the stuff in Thailand, but in Vietnam, but it'd have to be an electric bike for me if I was going to Argentina. So we got a question. Just let me put this to you from Jay Orlean Taub. I get the rationale around sustainable choices needing to be economical, but if we look at shifting to some more circular models such as refill, there will likely be a hit on profitability in the short term. Do the retailers have a responsibility to take a longer term view on things around refill to help actually lead the change? Debbie?
So as well as the bike stations, we do put water refilling stations into our stores and toilets. And this is in the smallest of community stores. So, 1,500, square feet, around 1,000 square meters. So we do all of that because, and we did this pre-COVID, but it's playing into COVID, I think, really well, in that your choices now, you're told not to go on public transport. We're not supposed to use cars from an environmental perspective. How the heck are you supposed to get anywhere? I don't know. But, actually being able to go on your bike, but plan a trip. And the reason that the toilets are important from a refilling perspective and all the rest of it is often people make lots of trips because they have nowhere to go to the loo. So it actually means that they can be out longer and actually do more of their shopping locally. So we, and I personally subscribe heavily to the idea of the 15-minute livable community, where all of your needs are contained. But to do that, you do need to cater for physical needs. And have we lost sales of bottled water as a result of having the refill stations? No, we haven't. Has somebody else lost a sale of a bottled water? Perhaps they have. But actually, it really is the right thing to do. And I think this unique situation that we all find ourselves in, especially because it's on a global scale, gives us the opportunity to really think about this. So actually, we're gaining massively from people shopping in a safe, local environment. And that's actually offsetting some of the things that we're investing in. So most of it, like 95% of our fridges already have doors on them now, and we're finishing that final 5%. We've been able to accelerate the investment in much more sustainable gas for our refrigeration. So we're swapping into that as a result. So we're actually reinvesting really heavily, and hopefully we'll emerge from this looking and feeling and contributing much more positively as a society than we did before COVID-19.
Very aspirational. Andrew, you're going to agree that, I mean, you have, led the way in some of these things, haven't you? So you're going to agree with that question as...
yeah, I mean, the straight answer to the questioner's question is yes. The more detailed answer is, with the plastic free, people sort of said, well, the packaging's costing you more. Compostable packaging is more expensive than plastic packaging. Yes, but we had a 4% uplift in sales. That's a lot of money you can spend on packaging and still break even. On the other hand, with refill, we have a huge, big zero packaging section. It doesn't deliver the return on square foot as per other parts of the store. It will eventually, and we might have to trim it down a little bit, but ultimately it's part of what we're doing. And overall, are we better off having done this? Yes, we are. And there might be bits that you have to invest in ahead of the curve. And that's, our job as pioneers to do that. And, so be it. So I think, yes, it is important, but it's not like we're saying, you got to invest all this stuff for many, many, many years before you get your return. By doing what you're doing and by doing what Debbie's doing, people like it, so they're coming in. So we got to do more of it, and that may cost money, but that's how it needs to work.
Nate, you'd agree in the article that we published before this, I think you made a point about there is a return for businesses, which is very measurable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and what's important to understand is, like any other aspect of your business, whether that's investing in cleaner restrooms, cleaner forecourts, food service, whatever that is, why are we as businesses investing in that? We want a return, but but we have to be willing to let that return come over time, and understand that the measurement of the return may be in different areas. It might be through brand performance that ultimately takes a little bit longer to get the financial return. I think, when we commit to sustainability, it can't be a zero-sum game where it's, I'm either going to get a return in the next 3 months on this thing that I'm doing, or it's not worth doing it. We have to be truly committed to that. And again, I think that's where it's important, in the context of your business, the time and place, to invest in smaller actionable items that you can do at your pace. The last thing you want to do as a business is go out and try to make a sustainability initiative happen and then pull it back after a year or after 18 months because simply you're not getting the exact return you were expecting on the timeline. You have to build it into the context of what you're trying to do. And refills, zero packaging things are certainly an aspect of that, but looking at what you can implement and be effective in the context of what you're doing is really important.
Makes perfect sense. Well, look, we could. I never overrun, but we've overrun because there was no way. I don't think I was able to stop the conversation, but I didn't want to because, I just like to say congratulations, Debbie and Andrew, for the businesses and your values that you're imbuing in them, or imputing in them. Is that the word?
Imputing, yes.
Imputing, and that's a new word for us, and a good one too. Thanks again for joining us, and Nate, thank you for giving us your perspective from Green Print, and we'll be hearing more from you in the next edition. Really looking at forecourts. But guys, I appreciate you spending your time, and look forward to our next conversation. Really enjoyed talking to you this afternoon.
Thanks,
Dan.
Thank you very much. Great to see you all. Thank you.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thanks again, guys. So thanks earlier to Mark, Debbie, and Andrew and Nate for a great session. Let me just tell you about what's coming up before we close. So the Green Reset is in two parts. This one looked at convenience store strategy. Coming up in part two, the big Green Reset on the forecourt, we'll be looking at. We just touched a little bit on the forecourt today, but not as much as we will be doing on the 30th of October in 2 weeks' time. We're really going to focus on carbon footprint and electric vehicles. We've got Brian Donaldson, Nate's coming back, and we've got Scott Case talking about some work NACS are doing on their sustainability playbook, which is very interesting. And you'll see the pictures there because everybody who registers for that webinar on the 30th will see a virtual. Will get to join us, not in person, unfortunately, but on a virtual store tour, looking at the latest. And this is just incredibly exciting. Maybe I get overexcited about these things, but look, it's a fantastic video virtual tour of the latest Circle K site in Norway, and looking at what that looks like. And it is quite different. It is quite reconfigured. It is very innovative, and you'll be able to watch it if you register for the next Big Green Reset on the 30th of October. So we'll let you know about that very soon. Thanks for spending this afternoon with us again, and see you soon. Good afternoon.